Hello. Today on Greater Podcast, we'll be talking to Paula Reid, who is an adventure psychologist. How are you, Paula?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to meet you, Ben.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. So, just to start us off, I also don't know what the answer to this question is, but what is adventure psychology?
So it is like sports psychology. So most people know sports psychology or they're familiar with it,
Yeah,
which is really about performance. Um, and then I specialize in well-being psychology, which is like positive psychology. So really, I've kind of put them together, and it's a performance and well-being psychology. But with adventure, there's always uncertainty and challenge involved. So it's kind of how to sustain your performance whilst looking after yourself in sort of difficult, dark, and uncertain times.
absolutely. So, you mentioned difficult, dark, and uncertain times as what it actually tries to fix. How does adventure psychology go about trying to solve all these issues people might be dealing with?
Okay. So we're not solving the actual issues, we're just helping people cope with the issues when
Yeah,
they come up, right? Because life is inevitably difficult and it's like a journey of ups and downs and challenges. So that for me is like an adventure. The word
absolutely.
venture is actually a challenging undertaking. So if you look up the origin or the definition of venture, it's a challenging undertaking. And we know that life then is challenging, and
Yeah,
so is running a business, and so is going on an adventure, because it involves uncertainty and challenge and variability and change and adversity and trauma. And it's just how to cope with it. So adventure psychology provides quite a few tools and tips and tactics and stories and inspiration and support to help people psychologically cope, um, assuming that the physical health or fitness perhaps is being sorted somehow else, but our minds and bodies are linked, of course. So the psychological well-being and the mental coping and all the tips and tools and theories and models that help with
absolutely. So, you discussed life as an adventure, and we usually ask the question, how has your life played a role in you entering the profession that you're in today, from a teenager to who you are now? But I'm going to rephrase it and say, how has your adventure actually played a role in the job you're now partaking in and trying to help people through this adventure psychology?
So for me, I don't take the word adventure lightly. I don't see it as a young child skipping down the road with like a knotted handkerchief on a stick. I
Yeah,
see it as actually quite a deep and meaningful journey. There's something actually called the hero's journey, which is quite interesting, which is we are all on heroic journeys. And there's a model for that. Basically, we go on a journey of trials and tribulations, and we get stronger and wiser as a result. So for me, my life journey or adventure is about being open to the world, about being open to receive all of its stuff that it does to us, the good and the bad. And it's about approaching it with an open heart and an open mind, and being quite curious as well. So for me, it's a bit like being on a quest. You need skills and strengths to survive it and to get through it. And it is kind of like a heroic journey, like any good
absolutely.
fairy tale or book or film. So I think my life is always interesting and exciting, and I always pack a lot into it. But I also purposely push myself quite hard because I believe in really packing my life with experience, and whether that's good or bad, it's still living life to the full. So
Absolutely.
I'm off to Ukraine on Sunday, where there's a war zone, and I'm purposely putting myself out there as a volunteer because not only, of course, to help the Ukrainians, but it's part of life's rich journey. And the more I do, the more I know I can do, and all that.
So when you look back at your adventure and etc., do you look back and think, I've accomplished stuff, and have you achieved your success? And what is the next step to continuing this adventure? Like you mentioned, you're going to Ukraine. Do you have any other plans in the future to try continue your life, or should I say adventure?
Yeah, always, Ben. I'm ambitious and I'm driven. So I don't believe in just sitting down and resting for my life. I don't want to sit in my comfort
Yeah,
zone my whole life. So I'm always on it. Not to the point of being obsessed or being being overly ambitious, but just, I have goals, I have ambition, I have drive. I want to make the most of my life. I want to be helpful and productive and useful and perform and achieve. So yes, of course. Um, so I mean that's just Sunday. in September, I plan to cycle across Ukraine because I'm currently cycling across 50 countries. That's my current venture that I'm doing. But I also work as well. So I'm also constantly working and delivering speaking and workshops and stuff as well. So it's always busy.
Yeah, it's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, but I like that lifestyle. I like to embrace it all.
An adventure for a lot of teenagers is a scary thing, including for myself. I mean, adventure, life, it's one of those things where we can't stop actually proceeding throughout life and almost stop time. What are a few like things that you need to go into this adventure in a safe way where you actually know you're doing the right things? And I mean, what are a few fundamentals that all teenagers should develop before indulging in their personal adventure?
Well, first of all, if you look at your strengths as teenagers, you have got confidence.
Yeah,
I'm 56 and I'm a middle-aged woman. And, we lose our confidence over time, especially, you know, at certain ages and going through the menopause and all that. So I just want to point out that, yes, it can be tough on teenagers at the moment, but don't forget, you do have that wonderful teenage strength of body normally, uh, ridiculous confidence quite often,
yeah,
and fitness and agility, whereas, I haven't. So bear in mind that you do have positives on your side. Um, then I think teenagers can be quite bold. They can commit or jump into doing things. And again, that's part of the traits of being a teenager. So that's all good. What you're lacking is the wisdom that you get from experience. So when somebody's experienced, it's because they've had lots of experiences.
which you
And
get
I've
through
had
age, right?
loads.
Yeah,
Yeah. So wisdom, the definition of wisdom is knowing how to live life. And it's difficult to kind of collect all that until you've done a lot of stuff. So for me, if I go somewhere adventurous, I've got lots of situational awareness and wisdom and insight and memories and tips that I can refer to, whereas perhaps a teenager hasn't got so much of that, but they have got confidence and strength and agility. So we've all got our different strengths, right? So for me, I guess the tip, if you like, is to keep exploring, to keep pushing
yeah.
the comfort zone out a bit, to keep going into the stretch zone, trying something new, trying something different, because it's all learning and growth and potential. And don't worry about looking like an idiot.
100%. So you mentioned before that teenagers almost indulge themselves into all these risks, etc. When is there should be a balance between a healthy risk and an unhealthy risk? How do teenagers know if they're going into the correct risk or the incorrect risk?
I think it's part of the rites of passage, Ben, that we are designed, because I do psychology, and part of it is evolutionary psychology and why we behave and do what we do. And I know scientifically that teenagers are designed to take risk. It's all part of the
Yeah,
rites of passage and part of the growing up and learning your place and learning who you are and what you're about. So it's kind of almost inevitable that you do embrace or indulge, if you say, in risk. So in a way, I wouldn't want to uh, slow down or repress that in teenagers. I think it's all part of life and living and working out what your strengths are. Having said that, I've got quite a few techniques that I use, but if I can share one that I recommend, for instance, before I do something really challenging, let's say, I write up a list of all the things that are worrying me. And I realize that half of those things are risks. So they're objective, external things that might happen. And half of the list of things that I might be worried about are fears, which are human and internal and, subjective,
yeah,
if you see what I mean. So before I skied to the South Pole, I had 31 things to worry about. Half were risks and half were fears. And you deal with them separately. With fear, you kind of got to lean into it, to accept it, to embrace it, to have it as your mate, to have it by your side as a nice guiding force. But with risks, you risk manage. And there are 6 ways to manage risk. And any business person or anyone who does risk management knows them. So there are 6 specific ways to manage risk. Everything from trying to get rid of risk to accepting it that it might happen. So I think that's my tip, I suppose, to think about it, to write a list of everything that you're worried about, divide it into 2 columns, risk and fear. With fear, just accept and embrace it, and with risk, there's 6 practices of risk management that are kind of standard business practice, to be honest.
And you mentioned risk. We're obviously discussing risk, and your adventures involve extreme physical and both mental challenges as well. What motivated you to start pursuing these adventures?
I think lots of things, Ben. I think deep down, I know it's good for me. So I think life can be too easy at the moment, although it's also very difficult in other aspects, of course. So I personally believe that we need to struggle and suffer as a human being, and that's good for us. If anyone practices Buddhism, it's a bit about suffering, or if you follow rugby, which I think you do, Ben, it's about struggle. So I think human beings get stronger and more resilient and more capable and more skilled with some struggle and suffering in their life. So I think deep down, I embrace these challenges. I choose to go on them because I think basically they're good for me. And I don't want an
Well,
easy life that's really simple and straightforward and, just sitting back drinking cocktails all day. It'd be really boring, but
yeah.
also, I wouldn't develop or grow or have all these rich experiences. So part of it for me is accepting that tough stuff happens and then learning to deal with it. So I'm not always comfortable or happy or enjoying the stuff that I do, but at least I'm living life to the full. I'm having a rich, deep experience. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm strengthening. And in adventure, we have something called fun, which is it's not fun at the time, but it's fun afterwards. It's that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
And is there one experience where you've just looked back and thought like, wow, that's just, I've accomplished this? Or is there one adventure that's just made a huge impact on you and who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads, of course, but I think the big one was skiing to the South Pole because that was 46 days skiing from the coast of Antarctica to the pole, and it was all down to my personal effort. I think because it was my personal performance and muscle and effort and grit that got me there. I wasn't on a vehicle, it was me, just me, my body, my mind that made that happen. And I think also I thought that the people that ski to the South Pole were an elusive, elitist, tiny bunch of people. And quite a lot of them, of course, are like very strong men with beards and ice all over their faces. And, you have this picture of the type of person that could ski to the South Pole. But I did it. So, of course, I now feel that I can do these things and almost actually that anyone can. If you really put your mind to something, then you can.
Yeah.
So that was a breakthrough moment, as well as the other stuff I've done. That was the big one because it felt so off my radar and so impossible for someone like me to do, and yet I did it. So yeah, that was a big one.
And when you finished it, you must have felt very accomplished about doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. My main feeling was just kind of pride, but not egocentric, just like wow, well done me sort of thing. But
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
just sense of achievement and pride because I also had an injury on both my legs from day 7, and I carried on skiing for 39 days with this polar thigh, it's called, and my legs were absolutely disgusting by the end,
Yeah.
and it took me 5 months to get the bandages off once I got back to UK. So I not only did it, but I did it with 2 really knackered legs, and so yeah, it's good to know that we can do these things, but also that people generally are very capable if they have to dig deep and push through.
Yeah, I think it's a big lesson to learn. Yeah, even for people who have big adventures, etc., or in the open world or in society or doing jobs, is that when you actually put your mind to something and really have to hurt to get there, it actually you feel more accomplished than if you just get it or etc. And I think we see this a lot in. I mean, I live in a third world country in Cape Town, as you've probably realized. And a lot of these people are actually to take themselves out of their life of being in a poor background. It's hard. It's a difficult thing, and they feel a lot more accomplished by doing that than if they're just given all the money or given the whatever. And it's a similar situation, your example, where you've actually had to hurt to achieve that goal and you've done it. And am I right in saying that that's the reason that it feels almost surreal to achieve such amazing things?
Yeah, it's like the point about, we need some struggle and suffering, and not only is it good for us, as you say, it feels better afterwards that we've had that sense of achievement, or pushing through, or doing something we didn't think we could, or all that sort of stuff. And I think a lot of people refer now to what I've done as a kind of white person's privilege. So
Yeah.
just to address that point, and it kind of is. To go to Antarctica, blooming expensive. Um, but I force that suffering and struggle in my life, because otherwise my life is privileged and I've got it too easy.
Yeah.
So, so and I've traveled a lot. I've been to a lot of remote and tribal places in the world, like West Papua or Borneo, and they've got a very simple lifestyle, but I do think they're kind of rich in life and community and friendship and satisfaction. So, without being patronizing about it, I go to sort of remote tribes that don't have much stuff, but they have a rich life because there's so much of a community spirit and laughter and play and support and love and kindness and simple pleasures, if you like. Whereas perhaps in the West, or what I do, you're worried about one email that
Yeah.
comes in, and that one email can give you a sleepless night. So yeah, different struggles for different people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a word that I think almost relates to our conversation, which is first world problems. I think people start complaining about all these ridiculous things of the wrong email or whatever, but at the end of the day, they're living in a nice house with good food on their table, and they continue to complain about this. How can people with these first world problems get around, in your opinion, trying not to be worrying about all these ridiculous things?
I know it is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it freaks me out a bit, to be honest, but anyway.
um, so I studied positive psychology, and there's practices in it that help maybe to ground us or give us perspective. But practicing gratitude, for instance, is a lovely thing to do, where you just think about 3 things you're grateful for that day, and it gives you more perspective. So I'm a firm believer in connecting with nature, being present, practicing gratitude. And I think they ground me as much as anything, really, and help me forget the emails and the.
Ridiculousness. Yeah. And are there any other psychological benefits of engaging in these extreme adventures that you partake in?
Oh yes, there are. I've got a list. There's about 30 obvious ones. There's a lot, basically. So first of all, you've got that connection with nature, and nature's been proven time and again to be good for us. So whether it's water or ground, blue therapy or green therapy, it's got a calming presence, and we are designed to live in nature. So again, if you look at evolution or evolutionary psychology, or the fact we used to be hunter gatherers, that's where we're designed to live, and that's where we're most happy and at ease. And the colours and the smells and what we see is much more fitting with our comfort than modern sharp edges and technical equipment.
Yep.
So being in nature, obviously physically moving. So if you're going for a walk or on an adventure or paddling, you've got that physical movement. You might be experiencing flow, which is a concept I'm sure you've heard of. Then when you're in flow, it's like you lose sense of time and you lose sense of yourself. You just absolutely get wholly consumed by the activity, like playing a guitar
Absolutely.
or painting a picture. So that's flow, and that requires high talent and high skill. But when those 2 things meet, you're in that lovely state, which is really good for you. And that's a bit like being mindful. So meditation, mindfulness, and being present, they all come along with being on adventure or being outside, like the state of flow. And then you've got some emotional impacts like joy, the joy of a sunrise, or awe if you're standing up on a mountain and you look at you, that gives you a sense of perspective. There's so many things, and I've studied it and I've written a book about it. There's a lot of psychological benefits and outcomes, and now I think it's being prescribed more for like social prescribing or prescribing nature to help people with definitely a lot of mental unhappiness, if not physical as well.
Yeah. So many teenagers may feel limited by their everyday routines and responsibilities. What advice would you give to these young minds who aspire to embark on their adventures but are unsure of where to start and how to overcome these fears that are getting in the way of them actually accomplishing things like you've accomplished in your life?
Yeah, I think compared to when I was younger, you've got obviously a lot of technical stuff getting in the way. So you've got social media, technical engagement, AI, chatbot. You've got so many, and they can enhance our life, but also they can get in the way
Yeah.
of that natural present activity stuff. So I totally get it. But the problem is, I think one young person, let's say, can get really tied and bound by all that technical stuff. And before they know it, 12 hours have passed and they're still on their phone. I do that. I get it. I think you have to force a break away from the lure of technical stuff and just physically get out. And that does mean putting the phone away or leaving it at home or put it in the pocket or in the backpack, which is quite a hard thing for us to do these days, I think, to actually force that. So I would suggest for teenagers, let's say, to get together, to either get together with one other person or have a group, because you can all support and encourage each other and force, let's go out today, let's go and, raft down that river, or let's just go for a picnic or a run or climb that mountain or whatever. So I think doing it in company would help have that support and community spirit and the come on, let's do it. And also forcing, a break away from the technology somehow, even if it has to be cut out of your hand. So yeah, other people, kindred spirits or peers or mates that you can muck around with, and then forcing it. So even if you like every Saturday afternoon in the calendar, it's marked to be an outdoor activity or an event or an adventure or playing. I don't know what you play in South Africa. Rounders, cricket.
No. Rowing, actually, surprisingly, I mean, that wouldn't even, yeah.
So yeah, actually mark it in the calendar and use mates to encourage you all to go with.
And in terms of stress, I think obviously your experiences regarding adventure and stress are much more or big and not hectic because you do volunteer. I mean, you obviously enjoy what you do. You wouldn't do it otherwise. But how do you handle the stress and fear and uncertainty of going into all these adventures? Are there any strategies or techniques that you may use to do this?
Yeah, there's loads. I think the best example is Ukraine. I went to Ukraine in March, and it is a war zone. We actually had incoming missiles, landmines, air raids, and that sense of dread or fear. So I think that's the best example I can give. And for me, a lot of the feelings are to do with mindset. And I know kind of everyone's talking about mindset these days, but mindset is just the way you look at the world.
Yep.
And it's kind of your beliefs around what you're seeing and experiencing, and so what you respond. So going to Ukraine, for instance, or doing something scary or dangerous, I view it quite logically or rationally as best I can. So for instance, in Ukraine, I'm thinking about the percentage likelihood of being hit by a missile.
Yeah.
And it's very, 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 very low. So that's one of the things that I do, is look at the rational or logical part of the situation. How likely is it I'm going to die now? How likely is it I'm going to drown in the river? How likely is it that I'm going to? I was trying to think something yesterday. My mum said, "Oh, be careful," and I was like, "Well, it's not going to happen, is it?"
Yeah.
So rational logic serves me well. Percentage likelihood of something bad or dangerous happening. Risk management we've already talked about. And then you've got the fear thing. So there's lots of techniques for managing fear. And the main thing is to know that fear is a positive friend. It's there for a reason. And if we think about our mindset, if we're feeling fear, one mindset can be, I hate fear. I hate feeling fearful. I hate spiders. This is awful. This is terrible. I'm going to be sick. I'm shaking. I'm so scared. And that's one mindset. The other mindset is, yeah, I hate spiders. However, I can deal with this. And the message I'm getting about fear is there to help me, and it's there to help me focus and not get bitten or whatever. So I accept that and bring it on, and that immediately reduces your fear because of the way you're looking at it. So I think mindset's a massive thing, and it helps a lot.
You mentioned, yeah, that makes total sense. You mentioned logical thinking, and I think the large reason why a lot of teenagers can't actually have this logical thinking is because all you see on the news is all the bad things that are happening. I mean, if you watch the news on Ukraine, you're obviously going there now. All you see is the bombs. All you see is people dying. You don't see the people who are safe. You don't see the people who aren't being bombed. And I think the media as a whole almost, it's not a trap, but it tells us stuff that isn't always completely accurate and all sort of stuff. And I think the main way to get around this is you need a strong mind, you need a powerful mind, you need a mind that's going to be motivated to, or in control of the way you think, to try just say, listen, the stats say this, it's going to be fine. I'm going to go to Ukraine. I'm not going to die. I mean, I hope you don't. But you get the idea. I mean, how do you build this motivation and this strong mindset to try get around all these things that we're being told?
Yeah, you're totally right, Ben. And it's the media does annoy me sometimes. So first of all, we're programmed to heed negative news more than positive news, and it's a survival thing. So again, if you look at evolutionary psychology, if there's a threat, we heed that message at least 3 times more than a positive message. So first of all, whatever we're hearing, if it's negative, we're at least 3 times more likely to heed it and worry about it than a positive message. So there's already a ratio there that's against us, and that's just survival training, really. Then you've got the media, which, as you say, is negatively biased. If it bleeds, it leads, is the phrase, right? So that most of the media is programmed as well to sell the messages that bleed. So you've got a double negative going on there. You've got our likelihood or leaning towards listening to risky messages more than positive ones, and you've got a biased media. And you kind of got to know that. So the first thing is to know that, to be educated enough or aware enough to know those 2 things happen. We're programmed for negative messages, and the media is negatively biased. That's already knowing that, like you've just said, Ben, sensible, right? Common sense, sensible. And then, of course, you've got your strategies for coping with that. So with the news, there's something called constructive journalism, which is trying to do the opposite. It's trying to still present maybe negative news, but what can we do about it? What's a healthy way of looking at this? What's a more constructive output with this news? So there's a bit of a slow movement towards what's called constructive journalism, which is not happy journalism, but just a better way of positioning the news. And also not to read or listen to the news after 6 p.m. because before we go to bed, it's the worst time to take on negative messaging. So there's things that people can do with that. I've been accused of having a Pollyanna view of the world, which I don't know if it translates, but it means having too much of a happy point of view. I don't actually, but I have a realistically optimistic point of view. So I believe in optimism, it's good for us, but it's realistic. So I know that shit happens. Sorry, I have sworn.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. You said, someone said you had a happy point of view. I mean, what's the problem with having a too happy or too optimistic point of view? I don't understand what's wrong with having that.
So again, the science and the evidence suggests that the best state of mind is to have a realistically optimistic point of view. So if you're too optimistic, you can get yourself into a bit of trouble by thinking everything's going to be fine. But it's good to have a mainly optimistic view because it helps you have the energy and the solutions to cope, but also it helps you generally be in the right state and the right mood and to achieve more than you would have if you were too pessimistic. So, yeah.
Well, it is a balancing act, if I'm not mistaken, of being too optimistic and too little optimistic. Where is the perfect space to be in that balancing act? And how do you view realistic optimism? I mean, how can we tell if our optimism is realistic enough, or if we're in the right headspace on this topic?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is to assume that things are going to work out well. Like you were asking earlier in this podcast interview about should teenagers take risks. With a health warning, yes, they should, is my opinion. And don't quote me on that, because somebody will take a risk and they'll get into trouble and they'll blame me. But you know what I mean? I think, yes, we should take risks. We should. And in fact, I'm speaking at a conference in September, which is all about taking more risk. We should all take more risk. We're too cautious at the moment and too conservative, and cotton wool generation, and too much health and safety and all that. If we're taking a risk, we should be optimistic about the outcome, but with a pinch of reality. So what could go wrong? What might happen if? Am I good enough to do this? Am I strong enough? Am I fit enough? Have I done enough training? That's all. We should have a positive view about the outcome, and we should have a high standard of achievement or goals, but we should also consider what could go wrong and what am I going to do about it.
And have you ever turned around and just thought, I'm not good enough to do something, or I'm not actually equipped for this? And has there ever been a moment like that?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that we are more capable than we think. So I'm always pushing people to do more. And I've kind of proven that by skiing to the South Pole, which I didn't think I could do.
Yeah.
So I really, truly believe that we are more capable, more strong, more skilled than we give ourselves credit for. But also, when the going gets tough, we can then pull out a load of extra resource out the back. There's something called Sisu and there's something called second wind. And they're both basically that when we think we're at rock bottom, there is a lot more resource within us.
Yeah.
However, having said that, I've taken on stuff that I was nervous about or worried about or thinking I might not be able to do it or I might not have the skills, but there was enough realistic belief, feasible belief, realistic optimism in me to give it a go. And I believe, I can't think of an occasion where I've attempted something and it's been a disaster. I've done some treks or mountaineering where I've chosen not to take a certain route or something because it looks too dangerous. Or when I'm in country and there's some unrest, I'm constantly keeping an eye out on the situation and making micro decisions all the time about risk.
Yeah. So first of all, what I think you've done is absolutely amazing. I'm going to change the topic a tiny bit to your personal definition of success. I think we did touch on it a bit earlier, but can you give me a clear definition of what your personal definition of success is and whether you've achieved it yet?
Right. So I think success for me is giving things a go, which could then include failure. But I don't believe in failure if you give things a go. So one of the tools that I use with people when they're about to take on a challenging adventure or venture is to define success. Because for me, it's not necessarily beating the competition. It might be having a personal challenge or goal or target, but it's not always about being the first or the fastest or the quickest or the highest or the longest. It can just be getting outside because I haven't been outside for a month. Yep. You know, there's so many definitions of success. So for me, success really is giving things a go and giving it your best shot in the circumstances.
Yeah. I noticed that you've completed over 120 bucket list items. I mean, that's, first of all, truly incredible. What are some craziest things that are on your bucket list now that you still need to complete? Or are you done and just having adventures? Till after you die. So does that mean in heaven you're going to be still exploring the most crazy adventures? Yeah.
Stuff, right? Who knows? So yeah, I've done. So my bucket list is everything from difficult, challenging things to fun and crazy things. So I took part in the Red Bull soapbox race a couple of times in London, which I don't know if you get it over there, but it's fantastic fun and ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, I've still got loads of things on my list. I'd like to go to the Tiger's Nest Monastery, which is a beautiful pilgrimage. So a lot of them involve traveling, and some of them are just ridiculous and silly. So I've still got on my list, for instance, to streak at a cricket game, but I don't think I will because I'm getting too old for that one.
Well, yeah. Let me know when you do that. I'll be watching. And then to end off our interview, I just want to ask you one final question, which I do in every interview I've done. I've asked this: is if you could go back and say one thing to your 16-year-old self, what would that be?
Carry on.
Carry on.
Yeah, I just think being 16 is unique to being 16, and I wouldn't want to be too patronizing or educational to that 16-year-old. Just like carry on, crack on, go for it, carry on, do what you were going to do anyway. You don't need me nagging you or telling you what to do.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for doing this, and you are a true inspiration, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben. It's a great podcast, great idea.
Thank you.